There is a plot of land in Jerusalem, no larger than a few city blocks, that holds the power to ignite World War III. It's the most contested piece of real estate on Earth, a place where three major religions converge, where ancient prophecies collide with modern geopolitics, and where the construction of a single building could trigger the end of days as we know them. This is the Temple Mount, and hidden beneath centuries of conflict lies a truth that terrifies world leaders. The third temple will be built, and when its foundation stone is laid, an irreversible countdown begins. Why two temples weren't enough? King Solomon built the first temple around 960 BCE, creating the most magnificent structure the ancient world had ever seen. It stood for nearly 400 years before Babylonian armies destroyed it in 586 BCE, carrying the Jewish people into exile. 70 years later, they returned and built the second temple, expanded gloriously by King Herod until it rivaled Solomon's original masterpiece. Then, in 70 CE, Roman legions obliterated it completely. Jesus had prophesied this destruction 40 years earlier. Not one stone will be left upon another. His words proved devastatingly accurate. The Romans dismantled the temple so thoroughly that today only the western wall remains, the retaining wall of the Temple Mount platform, not even part of the temple structure itself. For nearly 2,000 years, Jewish prayers have included a plea for the temple's restoration. May it be rebuilt speedily in our days. But this isn't nostalgia for a lost building. The temple represents something far more profound, the physical dwelling place of God's presence on earth, the point where heaven and earth connect, the cosmic anchor that holds reality together. Without the temple, Jewish worship remains incomplete. No sacrifices can be offered. No Day of Atonement can be properly observed. The priesthood cannot function. It's as if the operating system of creation is running on emergency backup power, waiting for the main system to come back online. The prophecies that won't let go. Multiple biblical prophets describe a third temple in precise detail. Ezekiel chapters 40-48 contain exhaustive measurements and architectural specifications, a blueprint downloaded directly from a divine vision. The prophet Haggai declared that the glory of the final temple would surpass even Solomon's original masterpiece. Zechariah described the Messiah entering this temple and establishing his reign from within it. But here's what makes these prophecies disturbing. They all connect the third temple to the end of the current world order. Daniel's prophecy speaks of a future ruler who will make a covenant with Israel, allowing temple worship to resume, only to betray that covenant halfway through, desecrating the temple and triggering unprecedented tribulation. Jesus referenced this prophecy directly, warning that when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, immediate flight would be necessary for survival. The Apostle Paul added another chilling detail. Before the end comes, a man of lawlessness will seat himself in God's temple, declaring himself to be God. This means the temple must exist for this prophecy to be fulfilled. No temple, no fulfillment. No fulfillment, no progression toward the final events. For centuries, this seemed impossible. The Temple Mount has been controlled by Muslims since 637 CE. The Dome of the Rock, one of Islam's holiest shrines, sits precisely where many believe the temple once stood. The political and religious obstacles to temple reconstruction appeared insurmountable. Until now. The red heifer, a biological countdown. Jewish law requires a specific ritual before temple service can resume. Purification using the ashes of a red heifer, a completely red cow without a single hair of another color, never having worn a yoke. Numbers 19 describes this requirement in detail. For nearly 2,000 years, no red heifer meeting these exact specifications existed. Then, in 2022, 5 red heifers were born, certified by rabbinical authorities as potentially meeting all requirements. They were transported from Texas to Israel and are being raised under strict supervision.
According to Jewish law, they become eligible for the purification ritual at age 3. These heifers will reach maturity in 2025. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has already prepared the specialized altar for the ceremony. The ashes produced would allow the purification of priests, temple vessels, and the Temple Mount itself, removing the final religious obstacle to temple reconstruction. This isn't theoretical. This is happening now. A biological countdown has begun. The political impossibility becoming possible. For decades, the idea of rebuilding the temple seemed like religious fantasy divorced from political reality. The Temple Mount is controlled by the Islamic Waqf. Any attempt to build there would trigger immediate war with every Muslim nation. World powers would never allow it. But geopolitical alignments are shifting with stunning speed. The Abraham Accords normalized relations between Israel and multiple Arab nations, something considered impossible just years ago. Saudi Arabia is quietly moving toward recognition of Israel. Traditional alliances are fracturing while new ones form. More significantly, religious Zionism has gained unprecedented political power in Israel. Government ministers now openly discuss temple reconstruction. The Temple Institute has prepared every vessel, garment, and instrument needed for temple service. Trained priests stand ready. Architectural plans exist. The only thing missing is permission. The location controversy, a possible solution. The biggest obstacle has always been location. Most assume the temple must be built where the Dome of the Rock currently stands, requiring its destruction, an act that would ignite instant global war. But recent archaeological research suggests an alternative. The temple may have stood slightly north of the Dome of the Rock, on the only flat area of the Temple Mount. If true, the third temple could be constructed without touching Muslim holy sites. Jews could worship in their temple, while Muslims worship in their shrine, mere yards apart. This peaceful solution might satisfy international pressure for religious coexistence while fulfilling prophetic requirements. Tomorrow, we reveal exactly what happens after the temple is built and why world powers are terrified of this ancient prophecy.
The architect's hands trembled as he unrolled the blueprints across the table in the secure Jerusalem facility. Every measurement matched Ezekiel's vision exactly. Every chamber, every gate, every ritual space had been designed according to the ancient specifications. "When do we begin construction?" a government official asked. The architect looked up, his face grave. "The moment we lay the foundation stone, we have 7 years. 7 years until everything changes forever." This isn't speculation. This is prophecy. And now you'll discover exactly what the third temple triggers and why there's no turning back once construction begins. The covenant that starts everything. Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9 describes a specific trigger event. A powerful ruler will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. In biblical prophecy, a 7 represents 7 years. This covenant involves Israel and allows them to resume temple worship and sacrifices. The text implies the temple either exists or is permitted to be built as part of this agreement. This isn't a normal peace treaty. It's a comprehensive restructuring of Middle Eastern power dynamics, likely involving religious rights to the Temple Mount, security guarantees for Israel, and regional economic integration. The world will celebrate it as the breakthrough that finally brings peace to the most volatile region on earth. But the celebration is premature. This covenant is a trap. The 3.5-year betrayal. Daniel's prophecy continues with chilling precision. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. Exactly 3.5 years into the covenant, at the midpoint of the 7-year period, the leader who guaranteed Israel's religious freedom betrays them catastrophically. He enters the temple, stops all sacrifices, and commits an act of desecration so horrifying it's simply called the abomination of desolation. What is this abomination? The Apostle Paul provides the answer. He will oppose and exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple,
proclaiming himself to be God. This person literally enters the Holy of Holies and declares himself divine, demanding worship. Jesus warned that when this happens, those in Judea should flee to the mountains without even stopping to grab belongings. He called the following period Great Tribulation, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. The mark system. Revelation 13 describes a system implemented during this 3.5 years. No one can buy or sell without receiving a mark on their right hand or forehead. This mark involves the name of the beast or the number 666. For centuries, this seemed impossible. How could a global economic system enforce universal compliance? But we live in the first generation where this is not only possible, but nearly implemented. Digital currencies controlled by central banks, biometric identification systems, smartphone payment platforms, social credit scores. The infrastructure for this system exists right now. Some nations have already implemented digital ID systems that track every transaction. The mark becomes the only way to participate in society. But Revelation warns with absolute clarity, those who receive this mark seal their eternal fate. There is no redemption for mark recipients. The choice is final and irreversible. The battle for Jerusalem. Zechariah 14 describes what happens as the 7 years conclude. All nations gather against Jerusalem for battle. The city is captured, houses plundered. Then, at the moment of complete destruction, something unprecedented occurs. The Lord will go out and fight against those nations. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley. This isn't metaphorical. The text describes geological transformation visible from space. The Mount of Olives, where Jesus ascended to heaven, becomes the landing point for his return. The mountain splits, creating an escape route for survivors. Every army on earth converges on Israel for this confrontation. Revelation calls it Armageddon, the ultimate battle between human rebellion and divine authority. Nuclear weapons, conventional armies, everything humanity can muster is deployed in a final attempt to resist the return of the king. They fail completely. The Messianic kingdom from the temple. After the battle, Zechariah describes survivors from all nations going up to Jerusalem annually to worship the king. The temple becomes the center of global worship, the seat of messianic government, the place from which divine law flows to all nations. Ezekiel's vision describes a river flowing from beneath the temple, growing deeper as it flows, bringing life wherever it goes. Trees along its banks produce fruit every month, and their leaves bring healing to the nations. This is the restoration of Eden conditions, with the temple as the new tree of life. Isaiah adds that people will stream to Jerusalem to learn God's ways. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. The choice that remains. Once the temple is built and the 7-year covenant begins, options narrow dramatically. The midpoint abomination creates a definitive division, those who worship the beast and receive his mark, and those who refuse and face persecution, economic exclusion, and likely martyrdom. Revelation promises that those who refuse the mark and maintain faith will rule with the Messiah for 1,000 years. They've chosen temporary suffering over eternal damnation. The temple's construction forces a choice: comfort and survival through mark acceptance, or suffering and death through mark refusal. There is no middle ground. In Jerusalem, everything needed for temple service waits. The implements are ready. The priests are trained. The red heifers mature in 2025. The only thing missing is the crisis that makes construction possible. When that moment comes, the 7-year countdown begins. Are you ready?